Welcome, 10th graders across the USA, to today's Explainer. If you've ever looked at a modern map and wondered why certain borders are drawn the way they are, or why specific languages are spoken on completely opposite sides of the globe, well, you're about to find out. Today, we're unpacking the late 19th century, a crazy era where powerful nations reached across oceans and just completely redrew the world. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll define the imperial age, look at the motives for global expansion, explore the scramble for Africa, examine some specific case studies, weigh the two sides of imperialism, and finally, see how it reshaped our modern world. All right, Section 1, defining the imperial age. What exactly was it? So when historians talk about imperialism in the late 19th century, they mean a very specific policy. It's when powerful European nations aggressively expanded their control over other territories. We aren't talking about casual, friendly trade agreements here. No, this was a highly calculated, systematic effort to project their national power way beyond their historical borders. And the sheer scale of this, literally staggering. These European powers weren't just taking over the town next door, they were stretching their grip thousands of miles away, pushing deep into the African continent, sprawling across the vastness of Asia, and reaching all the way out into the islands of the Pacific. It was, for sure, a massive global phenomenon. Moving to Section 2, motives for global expansion. Why did they do it? You gotta wonder, what fuels a sudden, massive outward push like that? Well, there were three main engines driving this. First up, economics. These nations were rapidly industrializing, so they desperately needed raw materials to feed their new factories and, new markets to buy all their manufactured goods. Second was politics. Grabbing overseas territory was kind of the ultimate international flex, a massive status symbol. And finally, strategy. Claiming these territories gave them absolutely crucial military and naval footholds all over the map. Which brings us to Section 3, the scramble for Africa. Where did it happen? Okay, the scramble for Africa was exactly what it sounds like, a frantic, hyper-competitive rush. In this crazy short window of time, powerful European nations essentially looked at a map of Africa and carved it up like a giant pie. They rapidly colonized vast regions, drawing totally new, arbitrary borders that completely ignored the people, the cultures, and the deeply rooted history that was already there on the ground. Leading this aggressive charge were the British, French, and German empires. Now, other nations were absolutely involved, for sure, but these three, they were the heavy hitters. They were constantly negotiating and fiercely competing to claim the biggest, most resource-rich slices of the continent. It was honestly like a high-stakes geopolitical chess match, just played out over millions of square miles. Let's jump to Section 4, case studies in colonization, who was involved. This foreign influence didn't look exactly the same everywhere. For instance, you had direct British rule clamp down over the massive population of India. Then you had that rapid, carved-up colonization across Africa that we just talked about. And over in Asia, there was this intense foreign influence aggressively forcing its way into China. So totally different methods, but all falling under the same massive umbrella of empire building. But look, imperialism was never just about drawing new lines on a map. It fundamentally turned the daily lives of millions of people upside down. Foreign powers completely overhauled local governments to suit their own needs. They rewired local economies specifically to funnel wealth back to Europe. They totally altered education systems and local cultures. And, as you might guess, as a direct reaction to all this massive disruption, we see the very powerful, inevitable rise of local resistance movements fighting back. Section 5. Two sides of imperialism, the contrasting impacts. When we look back at the historical record, we are essentially looking at two starkly different realities. On the one hand, you had the imperial powers bringing in new technological developments, stuff like modern infrastructure, massive railway systems, and industrial tools that literally changed the physical landscape. But on the flip side, the colonized peoples experienced a brutally heavy reality: severe economic exploitation, deep systemic inequality, and a truly devastating loss of their own sovereignty. To put a face to this whole expansionist mindset, let's look at the British imperialist Cecil Rhodes. He heavily championed global influence, famously stating his desire to essentially paint the entire map British red. He really is the poster child for the strategic mindset of that era, this unwavering, unapologetic belief that it was his empire's absolute destiny and right to extract wealth and force its political will across the globe. But as a major historical counterweight, we have the monumental figure of Mahatma Gandhi. Leading the pushback in India, Gandhi completely embodied the fierce resistance against this loss of sovereignty.
He utterly rejected foreign exploitation, championing the idea that no matter how good a foreign government may be, it can never be better than a native government. He was demanding ultimate self-rule independence, plain and simple.
Finally, Section 6, Reshaping the Modern World. What now? The thing to remember is that the imperial age didn't just end and quietly fade away into dusty history books. No, it actively reshaped the global politics, the economies, and the cultures that actually form the very foundation of the world you guys are growing up in right now in the US. The global alliances we see today, the modern trade routes, even the reasons why certain languages are spoken in totally different hemispheres, all of that is a blueprint forged during this intense period of 19th century expansion. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. The next time you look at a globe or read the news about an international conflict or even just buy a product manufactured overseas, ask yourself, how does the legacy of those 19th century European empires, their hunger for resources, and the arbitrary lines they drew still control the world you see around you today? Definitely something to keep in mind for your history classes this year. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you guys next time.